Last year, I spent the summer break at my cousin Adil's house in a small, sleepy town in Punjab, Pakistan. It wasn't the kind of place where strange things were supposed to happen, no haunted mansions, no creepy forests, just fields, quiet roads, and that calm, rural silence. I'm a city boy. I'm used to noise cars honking, vendors shouting, motorcycles revving. So, being in a town where the loudest thing at night was the occasional barking of a distant dog felt surreal. It was during the third week of my stay when something happened, something that still sends a shiver down my spine when I think about it. I've only ever told one person about it, and even then I made it sound like a joke, but it wasn't. It was real. I lived it. That night I had stayed up late. Adele had fallen asleep around 1:30 a.m., but I was still awake, scrolling endlessly through horror threads on Reddit. I remember the power had gone out briefly around 2:45 m.a., just a flicker, and then it came back on. I took it as a sign to sleep, but before sleeping, I remembered that I had left my phone charger in the car we had driven earlier that evening. The car was parked just outside the main gate, maybe 30 feet from the front door. It seemed harmless enough to just step out and grab it quickly. When I opened the door and stepped out, I immediately noticed how weird everything felt. There wasn't even a breeze. Not a single insect sound, no frogs, no crickets, nothing. Just pure silence. That heavy kind of silence that almost presses down on your chest. I walked to the car, unlocked the door, and leaned in to grab the charger from under the front passenger seat. As I was about to straighten up, I heard it. Footsteps. Clear, deliberate, soft, but definitely footsteps. Coming from behind me. I instantly froze. My heart jumped into my throat. I turned around so fast I almost lost my balance, but there was no one there. The street was empty. I looked towards the neighbor's house, then behind me, then even across the field. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was a cat. Maybe the wind. But the problem was there was no wind. Not even the slightest breeze. And the footsteps, they were too human. Forceless steps. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Like someone walking barefoot on gravel. I felt them before I heard them. That's the strange part. It was as if my body knew I was being watched before my brain did. Just as I turned back toward the car door to close it, I felt something even stranger. A sudden coldness. Not a breeze. Not the weather. Just this sharp, unnatural drop in temperature that hit my back and arms like invisible ice. I instinctively rubbed my arms, but it wasn't just cold, it felt wrong. Like the cold had a presence to it. I grabbed the charger, slammed the door shut, and backed away. I didn't want to turn my back to the street again. As I reached the front door of the house, I had this overwhelming feeling that something was walking right behind me, not running, not floating, just walking, calmly, slowly, as if it had all the time in the world. But I didn't look back. I stepped into the house, locked the door immediately, and just stood there, staring at the door, waiting to hear something. Maybe more footsteps. A knock. Anything. But again, silence. Dead silence. The next morning, Adele was making tea in the kitchen when I finally brought it up, casually. I asked, "Is this neighborhood always this quiet at night?" He glanced at me, almost amused. "Why? You couldn't sleep?" I replied, "No, I was just out to grab something from the car around 3 a.m. and it felt weird. I don't know." He paused for a second, then said something that made my skin crawl. "Yeah, my mom says she heard voices once when I was a kid. People here just avoid going outside late at night. It's like a local rule." Later that week, I asked Adil's uncle about the 3 a.m. thing. He didn't laugh or dismiss it. He actually looked serious and told me an unsettling story. Back in the 1980s, a woman in that same neighborhood claimed she would hear barefoot footsteps outside her window every night at exactly 3:17 a.m. She thought it was a thief at first, but nothing was ever stolen. She said the footsteps would come closer every night until one night they stopped at her door. The next day, she moved out. No one ever saw who it was. Some locals believe the area is cursed. Others say they're just stories passed down. But everyone agrees on one thing. Something is wrong between 3 and 4 a month. My last night there, I stayed up deliberately, not to scroll, but to see if it would happen again. I kept my phone camera ready. I even opened the window slightly. 2:58, nothing. 3:05. Silence. 3:12, still nothing. And then 3:17, man had mentioned. 4 footsteps, crunch, 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 right outside the window, not walking away. Not approaching, just standing there. This time, I didn't go outside. I just stayed still, watching the curtain, watching the darkness outside the glass. There was no one there, no shadow, no shape. But I knew something was. And then, like before, the air turned ice cold. I whispered Bismillah under my breath, and it was gone. No sound, no more footsteps. The cold vanished in an instant. I've thought about this night more times than I can count. I've tried to convince myself it was a dream, or that I imagined it, but I didn't. I was awake, alert, aware, and I've never felt anything like that cold again. I still don't know what it was. A spirit? A djinn? A glitch in the universe? I'm not looking for attention or sympathy. I just want to know. Has anyone else experienced something like this? Because I haven't forgotten those footsteps. And I never will. This happened about 13 years ago. I was a sophomore in college, and I went to a liberal arts school in Suffolk County, New York. Within the first month or two of freshman year, I had found myself in a very tight-knit group of fellow theater geeks, 6 guys and 1 girl, and they all loved horror movies and ghost stories. I had found my crew. Freshman year was tough. You know, you move away from home for the first time. You're navigating college life. You're trying to find your place. But we all held each other up and made the whole experience more enjoyable for one another. At the beginning of sophomore year, we decided that in October, as the Halloween season was ramping up, we would find a creepy wooded spot in a nearby town some night and scare the crap out of ourselves. So we did some research and we found that there was a particularly isolated area about 30 minutes away that was infamous for paranormal sightings. Perfect. The 7 of us split into 2 different cars and headed out into the night. Allow me to set the scene for you. You turn off a busy main road, flooded with strip malls and restaurants and whatnot, and you are almost immediately greeted by complete darkness. Again, this area was very heavily wooded. It was essentially a large web of winding roads surrounded by trees. Very few streetlights, very few houses. We all made sure to have fully charged phones and flashlights, just in case, but the goal was to keep driving until we collectively decided to pull over and go exploring. So, per the directions, we made a left off of the main road, driving for 30 minutes or so into the Stark network, picking directions at random, just getting intentionally lost. Our cars made a turn, and to our surprise, there was a huge log in front of us. We had reached a dead end of some kind, with nothing but trees beyond it. We all got out to see what exactly this was, stepped over the log, and noticed 2 narrow trails leading in different directions. This seemed like as good a time as any to grab our flashlights and do some amateur ghost hunting. We flipped a coin and set off on the trail to the right. The trail was so narrow that we had to walk single file to avoid getting whacked by branches. For whatever reason, I ended up in the back. I'm usually pretty rational and level-headed, but I have to say the further we went in, the more I was overcome with an uneasy feeling. I kept hearing sounds deep in the woods, unable to shake the feeling we were being watched. But I seemed to be the only one who heard these things, so I shrugged it off as my imagination. And in any case, the whole point of us being there was to get scared. Not to mention the fact that we were 7 able-bodied college students. What would we come across that could take us down? We headed down this trail for about 20 minutes, and just when I thought it would never end, we came to a massive clearing, and I mean massive. It was a large, open field of unkempt grass comparable in scope to a golf course, but not nearly as well manicured. Trees surrounded the entire field, which was so large we could not see the end of it from where we were standing. I was thrilled to get out of that narrow trail, but I don't think any of us were expecting to find an area so vast. One of us looked to the right and said, "Hey, check that out." We all turned, and there was an old, dilapidated house several hundred yards away. The house was completely dark, with no cars or signs of anyone actually living there. We walked over and shined our flashlights at it, and sure enough, the windows and doors were all boarded up. I managed to peer between the boards on one of the windows, and what I could see was an old white couch covered in plastic, but an otherwise empty room. Whoever used to live here, they were long gone. Because there was no way in, and because we all felt sufficiently creeped out by the house anyway, we decided to walk closer to the trail we had come in from, have a seat in the field, and figure out where to go next. We walked towards the narrow trail, but before we could sit, my friend Mark stopped what he was doing. His expression dropped and he pointed. We all turned, and on a very far side of the field, directly across from where we had come in, we could see someone tall, lanky, and pale dancing among the trees. And by dancing, I mean it was skipping around, grabbing a tree, swinging around it, and then doing the same to another tree. Basically, a do-sa-do. The moon was so bright and the woods so dark, it actually took a second for us to really understand what we were looking at. Jay, the 6 feet 4 inches skeptic of the group, wasn't seeing it. I leaned into him, pointed in that direction, and said, "Jay, look where I'm pointing. Don't you see that?" He squinted a bit, and the second that he saw it, he'd gasped with everything he had, clutched my arm, and whispered, "What the fuck is that?" Whatever that was, they stopped dancing, looked in our direction, and started charging straight at us. Without even thinking, we freaked and ran back to the trail. Yet again, Jay was the only one who didn't see what was happening. He shouted after us, "Guys, what is it? Where are you going?" After about 15 seconds of running like hell, I heard Jay scream, "Holy shit." I looked back and saw his flashlight following the rest of us into the trail. While the walk into the woods took about 20 minutes, we made it back to our 2 cars, hopped in, and were peeling away in less than 5. Once we were a safe distance away, we pulled over, got out, and checked in with each other about what just happened. My heart was pounding, and I know everyone else was feeling the same way. Nearly 15 years later, we are all still friends, living in different states, yet keeping in touch through marriages, divorces, children, etc. But occasionally, out of the blue, one of us will send a group text to the others with something to the effect of, "The woods, that really happened, right?" It most certainly did. That experience is always in the back of my mind, and I'm pretty sure it always will be. Here's the thing that still resonates with me about that night. Whoever that was, they were dancing maniacally in the woods at 1 a.m. and then ran directly for a group of young adults. Not at all fazed by the fact that they were severely outnumbered. Did he know we were there from the second we parked? Was he the sound that I kept hearing when we walked the trail? Whatever the case may be, when he came for us that night, you can be sure none of us wanted to stick around and see what he was truly capable of. It was my friend's birthday, and we all got pretty drunk. Nothing out of the ordinary for a party night. The next evening, we drank heavily again. I live with 2 of my friends, but they had to leave early the next morning to travel to another city for work. They weren't going to be back until late at night. That morning, I woke up earlier than usual, probably because I was still jet lagged from traveling a few days prior. I noticed my friends were gone, and I had an assignment to work on, so I dragged myself to the living room and started working. But I was incredibly hungover and couldn't focus. It was cold, and there was some sunlight streaming in, so I decided to lay down on the carpet to warm up and maybe nap a bit. That's when things got weird. I was lying there, staring at the door in the corridor. I didn't see anyone, but I could hear the floor creaking repeatedly. It was subtle at first, but then I realized I couldn't move. It felt like I was trapped between being awake and asleep. Then I saw my mom. She walked into the room and started cooking in the kitchen while talking to me. But here's the thing, I live abroad. There's no way she was actually there. That's when I felt a heavy, oppressive presence in the room. Suddenly, voices filled my head, and they were terrifying. They kept telling me to end my life, saying there was nothing left for me to do, no other options. I was arguing with them in my mind, trying to resist, but they were relentless. I wanted to call someone for help, so I grabbed my phone, which was next to me. My first thought was to message my mom, telling her something was seriously wrong. But just as I was about to send the message, my phone disappeared from my hand. I stared at my empty hand, confused. Then I saw my phone still lying behind me. I had never actually picked it up. This happened multiple times. I think I was reaching for help, only to realize it wasn't real. Then it escalated. The voices became louder, telling me it was time to jump off the balcony. I live on the 7th floor, and I saw the balcony doors opening on their own. It was like something or someone was trying to lead me there. At that moment, I felt something grab my legs and start dragging me toward the balcony. That's when I finally snapped out of it. I don't know how, but I managed to break free from whatever was happening. When I looked around, it was evening. Hours had passed. The light in the apartment had dimmed, and my heart was racing. I was terrified. I ran to my room, quickly got dressed, and left the house. I walked to a nearby cafe, got a coffee, and just stayed outside for as long as I could. This was easily the scariest and most surreal experience of my life. I don't know if it was sleep paralysis, a hallucination, or something else entirely, but I've never felt that kind of fear before. Does anyone have any idea what this could have been? I'm still shaken up and would really appreciate some insights. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.